Imagine being the pilot of a $100 million F-35C. When the warning light flashes red, weapons-grade radar has locked on. At that instant, two hypersonic missiles scream toward you at 14 times the speed of sound. The chase lasts under 2 minutes, but it sets off a chain reaction that brings B-2 bombers, electronic warfare squadrons, and a fake U.S. invasion force into motion. So here's the question. How can 88 seconds of terror in the cockpit trigger a full-scale precision strike without escalating into all-out war? Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. What does it actually feel like when the very thing that makes your aircraft a ghost in the sky, the stealth coating, the radar-absorbing curves, and the carefully shielded heat signature, suddenly counts for nothing? 1 second, the cockpit is quiet, except for the low hum of electronics. The next, a single alarm screams that your jet is not only visible, but locked in the crosshairs of an enemy system built to erase you from the sky. That's the reality that hit the pilot of Viper 1, an F-35C running a calm nighttime patrol above the dark waters near Scarborough Shoal. It was supposed to be routine, a visible presence flight to remind Beijing that America still flies where it chooses, even along a disputed reef. What no one foresaw was the radar spike that would come at exactly 3:16 a.m. Inside that cockpit, the pilot saw the data feed light up with coordinates and a range figure that was shocking: 300 nautical miles. That meant the Chinese array wasn't searching. It was tracking. Worse, it wasn't just tracking. The system had stepped into full weapons-grade mode, broadcasting target-quality data. In simpler terms, the F-35 was a glowing dot screaming, "Shoot me," across Chinese fire control screens. Ground crews manning an HQ-19 battery knew it too, and their response was immediate. Twin launch canisters cracked open, flames gushed as solid fuel engines bit, and two long, needle-like interceptors rose straight up, pivoted nose toward the sea, and ignited into full acceleration. Their clocks ticked in a different world. Mach 14 meant miles disappeared like heartbeats. They weren't closing slowly. They were covering almost 2 miles every single second. The pilot's body leaned into training. Left hand punched out decoys, right hand snapped the throttle into max afterburner. Flares screamed out behind the plane, short-lived fireballs meant to draw away infrared seekers. Strips of chaff glistened in the night sky, metal confetti to confuse radar. The real lifeline, though, was something invisible, a package of electronic countermeasures coded by engineers who knew that one line of software could mean life or sudden death. Those pulses flooded outward, a fake signature mimicking another jet, another position, another angle. For a split second, sensors saw 2 targets where a moment ago only one existed. That was enough. At 23 seconds into the chase, the first HQ-19 came screaming into that altered picture. It had been locked on a Phantom. The seeker head overcorrected, lost track, then self-destructed in a blinding flash, high above the waves. That was one problem removed, but only one. The second missile had kept its lock steady, closing the gap rapidly. At this speed, the F-35's computers predicted impact in under 8 seconds. Every nerve inside that cockpit fired at once. The pilot yanked the control stick into a roll so violent that the fuselage groaned, a deep metal flex ringing through the cabin. The jet rotated and dipped at its absolute stress tolerances never meant to be tested outside of simulations. At time mark 1 minute and 54 seconds, the missile overshot by fractions of a second and detonated at a safe distance. Surge waves rippled through the jet, but the airframe held. The pilot was alive. The stealth fighter that had lit up like a torch managed to prove why it still mattered. Being seen was not the same as being hit. Survivability had come down to seconds of extra warning, layers of deception, and a pilot willing to push his jet to points where wings threatened to tear. It was survival earned, not gifted. That narrow escape forced commanders to rethink their posture, because what played out over Scarborough Shoal wasn't just a close call. It was a signal, and it demanded an answer America would call Operation Silent Hammer. How did a short burst of danger in the South China Sea turn into a full-spectrum strike operation involving the most advanced bombers, fighters, and electronic warfare assets the United States could assemble? For American commanders watching the data feeds, the near loss of an F-35C was not just a narrow escape, it was proof that China had crossed a line. Attempting to kill a fifth-generation aircraft went far beyond testing limits or flashing a warning. It was a shot meant to destroy. That single choice forced Washington to send an answer Beijing could not ignore, one that punished the system responsible while keeping the door closed to wider war. The mission they designed, in the hours that followed, carried a code name, Silent Hammer. The first challenge was balancing force with restraint. U.S. leaders had no interest in trading missiles with China's mainland arsenal. A regional escalation could spiral into strikes on air bases, naval groups, even civilian ports. The goal had to be focused: neutralize the HQ-19 battery and expose its network as vulnerable, but do it in a way that remained unmistakably defensive. That meant using silence, shadows, and software instead of volleys of high-profile missiles. And that required a strike package built less around numbers and more around special capabilities. On the roster came stealth giants, B-2 Spirit bombers already on rotation in Guam, tasked with carrying precision JDAMs. They would not fly alone. EA-18 G Growlers were assigned the job of clearing the electronic fog by cutting enemy command links with 500-watt jamming waves. FIF-35s escorted them, their sensors wide open for early warning and air cover. Alongside them flew Super Hornets, not to fight dogfights, but to scatter mauled J decoys, miniature drones carrying jamming pods designed to present fake aircraft across radar screens. Each element had a narrow function, timed for the operation to the second. The deception stage was set in layers. Growlers began the intrusion well before the B-2s crossed into contested zones. Their signals penetrated Chinese networks, fragmenting radar feeds like broken glass. Technicians on the ground suddenly saw their targeting scopes fuzz into static. As they tried to recover, the Super Hornets pushed dozens of mauled J units into the sky. On sensors, a handful of fighters now looked like waves of attackers, closing from multiple bearings. In operations rooms, alarms flashed red as operators believed their HQ was facing mass air raids. They responded by launching interceptors and firing off defense missiles at phantoms that were never there. The Ghost Fleet was doing its job. Then came the kinetic strike. Weapons bays opened in silence, and a string of GBU-31 JDAMs dropped into the night. Each bomb carried a guidance kit that adjusted for altitude, wind, and distance in real time. 88 seconds after release, the strike concluded. Explosion after explosion tore through the HQ-19 launch pads, their canisters shredded and command bunkers gutted. Screens went black inside control rooms. The entire node, a site valued in the hundreds of millions, was gone. When the Spirits turned back west, there had been no American losses, no pilots downed, no aircraft missing. Yet the message was unmistakable. A system once advertised as untouchable had been erased within minutes by a silent combination of stealth, confusion, and precision. No wider conflict followed because the strike ended where it needed to, demonstrating once again that America's edge rests not only in firepower, but in its ability to weave deception and technology into a single, crushing answer. 88 seconds in a cockpit reshaped how deterrence is understood. It showed that survival doesn't always come from heavier firepower, but from the ability to confuse, hide, and strike with precision when the enemy believes you are already gone. Deception matched with stealth can bend the battlefield in ways raw speed or range never could. The next era of great power conflict may not reward the first side to detect, but the first side to disappear, and then reappear with decisive force. So let me ask you, does the future belong to the unseen plane, or the network no one can break?